All right, taking it one position group at a time. Let's start with the position group, Darren Urban, Paul Calvisi, that Steve Keim identified as the biggest need when asked about the offense. And he said, playmakers. There's Larry Fitzgerald, there's Christian Kirk. Obviously, you have David Johnson. But when it comes to catching the ball, we know the Cardinals want to throw it. The question is, who else is going to catch it in 2019?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question, and I think it's one of the number one things this team has to figure out. It's good that Steve Keim is talking about it because I don't think there's any question when you start looking at the wide receiver core, it's something that needs to be addressed. I mean, this is a group that just a couple of years ago was a major strength of this team. Now you're to the point where beyond Larry Fitzgerald and Christian Kirk, there are a lot of question marks. I mean, only J.J. Nelson is an unrestricted free agent and could possibly leave, but what you have left, with all due respect to the Chad Williams and the Trent Sherfields of the world, are these guys that can take you to the next level? And I don't think there's any question they're going to have to look at that.
It's hard to believe J.J. Nelson had 7 catches all of last year. I mean, there are a lot of question marks. And to me, when you look at the recent track record or lack thereof of draft picks of rookie receivers making an immediate impact, now Christian Kirk did a pretty good job, but really he's been the exception the last 5 years. It makes sense to me to target an experienced free agent receiver or two. I'll throw out a couple of names. How about Golden Tate? Cardinals very familiar with him from the Seattle days. Randall Cobb, Green Bay, connections to David Rye, the receivers coach, and Tom Clements, the new passing game coordinator.
Well, I don't disagree with you from the concept of that a rookie receiver is going to take longer to get in there and maybe make a difference, and I like the idea of getting a veteran. You have to kind of see where this goes. You mentioned those two guys. You could make the argument that Randall Cobb in free agency might be the second best free agent out there, or Devin Funchess, or these guys who in themselves, where they are in their careers, probably wouldn't really jump on the radar all that high given where they are at this point and their production. Yet these are the guys that you're looking to pick at. You know, Golden Tate is probably going to be the number one receiver out there. I'm guessing there's going to be more than one team looking for him. It might cost a pretty penny, and you got to kind of work that cost-benefit ratio.
If you're looking for that speed guy, sort of that Tyreek Hill, and everybody is, what about a Tavon Austin? What about a Tavon Austin, this Cliff Kingsbury offense, that jet sweep guy, the guy who can provide the misdirection, sort of the eye candy for the defense? I think that's a guy. If you're not going to keep J.J. Nelson, you need that elite speed, I think.
I don't disagree with you. Again, Tavon Austin is somebody who hasn't been able to really find his way in this league, and you have to figure out, is it because if he was in a scheme like this it would work better, or if it's just that's kind of who the player he's going to be.
All right, March 13th is when free agency begins, the league year at least. We'll see what the Cardinals have in mind. All right, if I said there were 10 different starting combinations and 7 straight games with a different starting combo, you would identify the position group as?
Offensive line.
Yes, indeed. And there were 7 guys who ended up on injured reserve. There was 1 starter who was cut mid-season. The Cardinals need to hit the big red reset button on the O-line, don't they?
I mean, I think everybody knows that. Steve Keim knows that. I mean, I don't care what kind of offense you're running, even if you're talking about Cliff Kingsbury and moving the ball around and quick passes or whatever it might want to be, you've got to find a way to protect. You've got to find a way to create more of a running game. That was absent last year.
And look, in the past, they've gone the free agency route. Justin Pugh last year, Andre Smith, going back to Mike Upati, heck, you can go all the way back to Oliver Ross. We remember that. So are those guys out there? Do they have the cap room, first and foremost? Because offensive linemen are expensive.
Well, they're expensive because the few good ones that do hit the open market these days, there's a lot of teams that want them. When you look at the possibilities of who could be free agents by the time we get to March, I think the pickings are going to be slim in terms of the really good ones. You're probably going to have to overpay to get a couple of those guys in there. And the reality is adding in free agency helps you quicker because kind of like wide receiver, it's tougher to fit in a rookie offensive lineman and have him do really well. Mason Cole obviously had to start all last year at center, but he had his ups and downs. You'd rather have a veteran if you could.
You have some guys in their mid-20s, Trent Brown, Donovan Smith, Juwan James, but they're going to get big money and their teams might tag them. Let me throw out a name. How about Jared Valdir, the former Cardinal, right tackle, and remember he played last year for Sean Kugler, the new O-line coach in Denver. And Coug says he had a really good year when he wasn't injured. He wasn't fully healthy, but when he played well. I could see a return of Jared Valdir. What do you think?
Maybe. I would say with Jared Valdir, the issue is just what you said, the injuries. Well, I think one of the reasons the Cardinals were willing to move on is because he couldn't stay healthy. And if he got hurt again last year, that's tough.
Okay. Joe Barksdale, of course, he's a guy on the current roster, could be a guy they re-signed. They had him at the end of last year.
Possibly.
Okay. All right. New O-line coach. We'll see if it's a new O-line period starting March 13th.